Hello, and welcome to your AiSAD online course. Today's lesson is an introduction to creative communication. Let's start by asking this question: what is communication? And we can say that communication can be described as the transfer and exchange of information, both factual and fictitious. Communication may include the use of words, but can also exclude the use of language. It may be verbal or non-verbal, and can also be universal, as is the case with symbolism and sign language. We use communication every single day when we speak to friends, face-to-face or on the phone, or online through the internet and email, or through Skype and Zoom. And we use our mouths and our ears to communicate. We also use our eyes and even use hand gestures. And some people use sign language to communicate. So we're all familiar with communication, but what is creative communication? So we can say creative communication is unusual. It is not just the plain, regular conveying of information. There's something special about it, which makes it unusual and different. So the reason we call it creative is because it is different. There is some aspect of creativity involved in the communication, and the fact that it is different is very important, because if something is different, it makes it stand out from the rest. So we'll talk about this a bit more later on. Then creative communication is also inventive, meaning that it is a way to create something that wasn't there before. Okay, so it doesn't just follow what has been done before. Okay, it's inventive, inventing something new, which enhances the communication or strengthens the message and makes it surprising. Okay, so it's important that the communication is inventive. And then a very important aspect is that it is engaging. Now, engaging means that the person or people you're communicating with want to listen or see your communication. They want to engage with it. They want to show their interest and pay attention to it. And if the communication is engaging, it will also be understood better and remembered better. So by being creative with the communication, we can make it more engaging. Now, why would we want to do this? Why do we want the communication to be inventive and different and unusual and engaging? Why can't it just be straightforward? Why can't it just be plain and normal or usual? There's a very good reason for that. Because we live in information overload. Okay, every day of our lives, we live in a world where on the streets around us, on our screens of our phones and our TVs, the channels we listen to, the radio stations, everywhere we go, outside our homes, there is information being projected to us. Advertising being shown to us, things that constantly demand our attention everywhere. So imagine, if you look at this picture, that one of these signs or billboards is your message that you want to get across. And you're competing with all the other signs and messages around it. So as you can see, it's a huge challenge. And this is why creative communication needs to be different and unusual in order to stand out amongst all of this clutter, so that it doesn't just get lost in the mass of messages out there. Let's just look at the elements of creative communication to help us define what it is that we are working with. So most communication, and especially creative communication, is made up of 4 basic things, which are words, visuals or images, design, which includes graphic elements, and then composition. Now, if we pay attention to all 4 of these things, we will be able to produce something that makes sense, that is engaging, and that is a strong creative communication that is unusual and inventive and different. Okay, so let's just go through each one of these and just get an idea of what exactly we're talking about. Words. In creative communication, words are used in the form of headlines and text. In advertising, headlines that are shorter tend to have more impact as their meaning can be absorbed quicker. Copywriters are trained to write creatively, using words cleverly to communicate concepts in a way that engages the audience, is understandable, and also memorable. Additional information is added in the form of text or body copy, which can be short or long, provided it is informative and interesting. Visuals. To make the communication clear and exciting, visuals are used together with words to form a complete message. A creative concept can be conveyed clearly if the visual is well considered and understandable. Stylized and unusual visual treatments increase the impact of the communication and also provide a form of entertainment to the audience, especially if a clever element of surprise is included in the concept. Design. Design is the skillful process of planning and styling the appearance of a piece of visual communication to maximize its appeal and differentiate it aesthetically from other information around it. The elements of graphic design, such as line, color, texture, and shape, are used as the building blocks of a composition. The principles of design, movement, proportion, etc., are used as guidelines to create the layout and composition. Composition. The composition of a piece of creative communication is the arrangement of its separate elements in an orderly way. The information is arranged by a hierarchy of importance to ensure that the audience receives the message in an understandable and effective sequence. Now we can divide communication into 4 basic different types. And then amongst these, there will be even more subtypes, okay? But basically we could say, we could use visuals only, which is the case in visual art, design, different types of design, and photography. Then we could have visuals and text, like posters, ads, book covers, memes, etc. Then we have moving images, such as animations, videos, films, and TV. And then we also have sound-based creative communication. And the most familiar type is songs. We all listen to various types of music and songs. Soundtracks, such as are used in films and advertising, and also radio ads. Now, you might be able to think of many others, and it's a good idea to become aware of the different types of creative communication around you and to start paying attention to them and see what works for you, what doesn't work so well, and how do you as a creative person absorb communication. What type of communication appeals most to you? Are you more visually focused, or do you engage more with sound, the sound of a voice or music? Are you someone who loves words? Or do you really love film and animated graphics? Okay, so start becoming very much aware of these and start looking at them from a critical kind of perspective. And the more aware you become of these, the more it will help you moving forward in this course. Now let's look at some examples of creative communication. Also, when you're moving around in the world outside, or you're surfing the internet, start to gather your own library of creative communication by taking pictures and doing downloads of various things that inspire you. When you build up this kind of library, you can always reference it again later on to get inspiration for your own work and to just develop a critical eye for creative communication and the various things that do and don't work for you. Now, firstly, creative concepts are very important because if we look at these two examples of images, both of them are for hair styling product. Okay, we could make a guess that it's for hair gel or hair wax. Now on the left is an image of a man with a nice hairstyle, and you can see that he's got product in his hair. On the right is basically the same kind of image, but it's very creative conceptually. The way that his hair has been shaved shows this creature clinging onto his head. So this is a creative concept showing that this hair product, this hair wax, has a strong hold. Okay, so even without words, we can see meaning in this visual. And it's much more engaging than the picture on the left, which doesn't have a concept to it. So it's very clear that having a creative concept can make an image much stronger, more interesting, engaging, clever, and memorable to the audience. We're just going to look at a few more examples, but before we do, it's important to always avoid confusion in creative communication. All right, so this is an advert where there is a bit of confusion. The headline is fine, smokers will always be on the losing end. Kind of pun in the words. But then we have an image of an athlete, legs that look like they belong to a really fit person running. So it creates an image of health through the use of that image. So having these two images together is a confusing visual message because it conveys a negative message about smoking, but also a confusing, positive, healthy message with a runner. Okay, so when we are being creative in communication, it's not about complicating visuals. Okay, creativity doesn't have to be complex and certainly shouldn't be confusing. So just bear this in mind. Here we have another smoking or anti-smoking image But this one isn't confusing at all. We've got the cigarette wrapped around this guy's neck as if it's strangling him and robbing him of breath. So it's very clear. There's no confusion here. It's a very powerful image, very clever and creative, and beautifully executed. Here's another creative image for anti-smoking, where the ash has been treated very creatively as human skulls. This image is clearly about the earth, nature, and it seems to communicate the message that the earth is melting. So this makes one think about global warming. So it's quite a powerful message, a very simple image, and very creative. Here's another image for global warming, which shows a sad-looking polar bear floating on his block of ice and all the litter in the sea. It's quite a complicated visual to create, and therefore, as you can see, it's not a photograph, but an illustration. So it's very well illustrated and also quite engaging because of all the detail and the emotional aspects of it. Here we have quite a sad but effective image. Also commenting on nature conservation and environmental awareness. Then here, the natural protection of this spray, which is some kind of insecticide, is demonstrated visually here through the chameleon, which is creatively used to say something about catching insects or combating insects, because as we know, chameleons use their tongues to catch their prey. So it's very cleverly placed in the woman's hand in the same position as she would hold a can of spray. So very clever and simple concept, well executed. Now, when you turn information into creative communication, it's important to remember that our audience is still human, all right? We are speaking to somebody. So it's important to make sure that the person or people we are speaking to are attracted to what we're showing them so they can engage with it and absorb our message. Okay, and how do we appeal to human beings? If you think about yourself, how do you interact with the world around you? What makes you aware of things around you? And of course, to draw their attention, we have to stimulate their senses. So all of us use our senses to interact with the world around us, to place our attention on certain things and filter out other things. We use our senses to enjoy entertainment and various experiences. So remembering this about our target audience will help us to find ways to grab their attention, because remember, we are competing with masses of other messages out there. So in other words, we want them to see, to hear, to taste, to touch, to smell, to think about and activate their imaginations with our messaging. All right, so therefore we can use visuals, we can use sound, we can use tactile experiences, we can engage their imaginations with beautiful imagery that can almost make them taste and smell what they are seeing, and so on. So it's very important to put yourself in the shoes of your target audience and try to imagine how they will experience what you are creating. And remember that to stand out in the clutter, we must be creatively different. All right, so we're going to learn in subsequent lessons how to go about doing this. So for now, moving out into the world, take note of what stands out and what gets lost in the clutter. And keep a record of that so that you can start to see for yourself what works and what doesn't work, and start to get some inspiration for your own work. So thank you very much for completing the lesson, and see you again at the next AiSAD lesson.